Hi, this is Max, head caretaker of the Garden of Eden. Welcome to the Cosmic Fuel Pump, where reality this week takes us all on a ride to near death and back.
Out of my body at last, seeing my future and my past. Floating through the tunnel now, I look around and say, oh wow, it's so peaceful here, I don't feel no kind of fear. Just drifting and singing my song. Oh Lord, why's that tunnel so long? But what's that ahead of me? Is that a golden light I see? The face of God shines through, and I'm heading straight for you.
Hi. Well, it's treat night at Suzanne's. I'm excited to have somebody with me to talk to. In fact, it's my first somebody who I've actually invited to share this space here at my wonderful house, which we've been occupying since we sold the restaurant, if I'm talking to the old fans out there. And this is somebody that I talked about on one of the old shows. I did a whole show, in fact, about his work. I didn't know him, but I was so turned on by a paper that he sent me that I built a whole show around it. His name is Kenneth Ring, and his expertise, no camera, I see you moving over there. It's not time yet, because I want to talk some more. His expertise is near-death experiences. Now, we're going to have a wonderful time tonight talking about near-death. Strange but true, because near-death experiences give us a lot of the juice for life. The learning that we get from them gives us a lot of the information with which to lead wonderful lives. I want to start before I turn to Ken, however, and read to you something from the LA Times this week. There's an article in the View section entitled, How Cancer Made Patients Strive for Positive Change. And it was not the woman wrote that cancer was the very best thing that ever happened to her, far from it. But, as she said, you take a long look at your life and realize that many things that you thought were important before are totally insignificant. That's probably been the major change in my life. What you do is put things into perspective. You find out that things like relationships are really the most important things you have. The people you know and your family. Everything else is just way down the line. It's very strange that it takes something so serious to make you realize that. And then I wanted to read you one more thing. The women in her study showed a remarkable ability to turn a personal tragedy, to turn a potential tragedy into personal gain. This was an article about a woman who's working with patients who have cancer. Well, isn't it interesting that in this funny game of life, the times you go to the brink, the times you almost lose it, are the times when you get the information with which to gain it. And the wonderful thing about the information, hopefully we all don't have to have these catastrophic experiences. Hopefully we can learn from other people's information how to better approach our lives so that we can get the gains without the losses. So with that, I do want to turn to Ken Ring, professor of psychology at the University of Connecticut, who is one of the experts in the field, the most interesting person in the field that I've ever come across studying near death.
Right?
Let's see. Well, and the reason that Ken Ring is on the show is not only because this is his field, because there are a lot of interesting fields and people haven't sat on the show with me, but because actually of who he is. It's the energy that he embodies that I'm delighted to sit next to. So, you want to bet your eyes? Oh!
Clever, Suzanne.
Well, wait a minute. Don't cut it. Don't cut it. Maybe we can be au naturel and have a glass of water fall on the floor and have it be okay.
The glass had a near-death experience, I think.
Right, the glass had a near-death experience, right? Just watch us think on our feet. Okay, Ken, so hi there.
My feet are wet. I don't know about yours.
Well, you see what I mean? We couldn't have planned it better. On the way here, I was driving, and I was much more interested in him than in the road. And at one point, he cautioned me not to have an experience so that we could have something really juicy to try. Right. So, to what do you owe your joie de vivre? Isn't this interesting? You're in the field of death, so to speak. And there you are, so totally alive. Do you have any words of wisdom to share about this? And have you learned any of it from this work you've been doing?
Folks that deal with death tend to have a lot of humor. That's what I found.
Yeah.
Even, Moody in his book, Life After Life, which was the first of these very popular books on the subject.
And the author of your introduction, yes.
True, yeah.
To your book.
Yeah. Says that some of the people that he talked with said that when they encountered the light and felt that it was a presence there, a being of light, that it had a sense of humor. They bring back something of that humor with them. And there's a lightness about it. People that have this kind of experience happen to them. It shaves off their fear, if I can put it that way, and they are light afterward, and they are filled with this particular quality. And if I have any of it, I don't think it's necessarily my own. It may be what I picked up from hanging out with these people. Because I have to tell you, Suzanne, that when I first started doing this particular kind of work, I would interview these persons, and they were my subjects, my respondents in my study. Then I got very fond of them, and they became my friends. And for years in Connecticut, when I was doing my research there, as I'm still continuing to do it, but in this particular phase of it, I was living at a converted inn near the university where I teach, and we called it the Near-Death Hotel, because so many of the people that I came to know would sort of stop by. They would hitchhike across the country in some cases. They would stop for a day or, for an evening. They'd stay for several days, and they'd share their stories with me. So I had a lot of time to spend with these people, and really, they're very beautiful people. They have a great serenity, a great peace, and a great sense of humor.
Yes, I would see why you would be drawn to spending time with such people.
Yeah,
these
beautiful.
Quote kind of people are the kind of people I hang out with. Hopefully, have not had to undergo such experiences, but there's an authenticity that's rare in the world, and people who've been to the brink seem to come back with it.
Well, what you were saying in the beginning of the quote that you were reading, that people who have this kind of extremity to deal with in their life, they get their values in order. They decide what's important, and as the woman you were quoting said, relationships are important, caring about others is important, loving is important. Mm-hmm. And people have that clear in many of these instances where people have near-death experiences, and they act from that particular place. So there's a directness about them.
Yes.
And a warmth.
Yes, I know that from reading the quotes, Mm-hmm. There's also a kind of awesomeness about them. Like I get shivers up my spine when I hear how connected they are to a certain truth that we have no way to prove, let's say. We can't put it under our microscopes, except proving it by this internal monitor that just goes yes, that knows. Mm-hmm. Nobody's got anything better than that internal monitor. Right. Nobody's been able to replicate that. And as we come to understand more about life, as I come to understand more about life, I trust more and more that when the shiver goes up my spine, I'm in the presence of the truth.
Yeah. People who have this particular kind of experience say that it's not just a single encounter with the light, which seems to be maybe the word for the totality of this experience, but that they get a transmission, as it were, from that light. They bring that light back with them, and they use it as that internal monitor. They can refer to it, they can draw upon it, and they can, it sort of steadies them. When they get caught up in the busyness of everyday life or caught up in sort of the pettiness of life and begin to lose themselves in that, then they remember the light.
Oh, I love hearing this. You're telling me some things that I actually don't know about humor.
There are things you don't know.
Strange. The things about humor. I didn't know that about humor. But it makes perfect sense to me what you're saying. Because I know, for instance, that people often have gurus for that very reason, that they can tune in to the energy of the teacher who is clearer than they are. And all of a sudden, the confusion in them clarifies. They kind of they ride the teacher's energy. And to think that the teacher could be the light, which is, the grandest teacher, it's God, it's source, it's whatever, the life force. And to think of tuning into that for guidance, it feels like a real privilege. It almost makes you want to have had such an experience. I want to stop you for a second, though. I want to go back. I saw you were about to. Shy, I ain't. I want to go back, though, just in case we've talked too much without people actually knowing quite what we're talking about. I don't know if it's so popular in the literature now that people know that there is this whole category of people who on operating tables, pretty much, or ambulances, or under medical supervision, have started to go. And they've gone further than people used to be able to go, except now we have these wonderful mechanisms for bringing people back. Our medical technology brings people back. And so that what we're talking about is studies that have been done or experiences, that many of these people have shared with people like Ken, where we now have a body of wisdom about what it's like to die, my mother says, well, they came back, they didn't die. And I say, well, true, that's sort of the prove it to me question, which is fine. Healthy skepticism is fine. For me, however, I think I get the shivers that say, oh, this is true, because it rings true. It rings a parallel note. Can you ring a parallel note?
You can with Ken Ring.
Oh, with Ken Ring. Right. Thank you. I'm so glad you have that there, because I know that didn't make too much sense. But for instance, the kinds of things you learn in mystical experiences, overwhelming experiences that come over you for whatever reason, they come over you, no reason. You see these same things. Mm-hmm. Drug experiences take you to the same place. There are echoes everywhere, so that these are not little isolated things that you can dismiss so easily, because I know the spirits that are coming through, being channeled now. We talked about that on the show. In fact, our last show was about a spirit named Emmanuel, mm-hmm. whom we had in the living room. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not so inclined to believe in spirits. It does sound a little weird, except that it's not. I know from the communications that they have that ring of truth, and that people who can't know what they are saying, the channels, have these words come through them that, where do they come from? And they have the same coherence that the people who've almost died bring back from that place,
Yeah. My son, you have much work to do, and your family and friends need you too. So I'm sending you back one more chance to get on track. You'll come to me later on my cosmic elevator. I think that the one thing that really needs to be brought out is that, as you say, these kinds of experiences can occur in a variety of ways. They don't only occur in conjunction with a near-death crisis. That's one of the best ways to sort of trigger these kinds of experiences, but they can happen in a variety of ways. And I think the reason for people connecting with these experiences at a very deep level, sensing the truth in them, is that everybody has that light inside. And when a near-death experiencer talks from that particular place inside himself, it's like there's a resonance of sort between the persons. So I think everybody knows that. I think everybody feels that. And I think that's part of the beauty and the feeling of blessedness that one has when one's in the presence of these people who are speaking from this particular understanding. Not just intellectual understanding. I say not just understanding, but a knowledge, someplace in themselves. And I think that's probably why I spend a lot of my time, not only my professional time, but my free time, in the presence of these people whom I consider to be, in some very real sense, my own teachers.
Oh, I am really so drawn to you. I really mean that.
You want to get married?
You already do that.
No, let's not get into that.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I've done it more than once.
I drove you here. I got your story, No, I really appreciate your somethingness, your realness, your genuineness. It's the thing that got you into this chair. This chair is not for information. This chair is for reality. And as we say in the show, our intention, our interest is to change reality, because it needs changing. People.
I wouldn't say necessarily to change reality.
What would you say?
But
is it your show?
Well, I'm trying to get a few words in edgewise, but I'm having a difficult time. No, I'd say the reality is there. The reality is, the light is, and it's not so much necessary to change reality as to understand what that reality is. And to me, these persons who have this kind of experience, or others who may have had a similarly deep transformative experience, however it may have brought about, are channels of this particular reality. They sort of embody the truth about themselves, and we respond to that. So I don't think it's necessary to change reality, but really to appreciate it.
Absolutely. You define my definition differently, and I absolutely agree with yours. Reality being something truly wonderful, things perhaps that we don't all see, things that we're blocked from by our confusions, our egos, and our attachments. Yeah. And indeed, understanding reality, is I guess we would say that's a way to change it, to change the prevailing consensus reality, which doesn't have us loving one another half enough for me.
Yeah, I accept this.
Oh, thank God.
Well, we agree on that. Now, what can we find?
Is it time to go home? That's right, you're supposed to have conflict. Yeah. Yes, I used to be an actress, and I used to be in touch with producers, and always burned with a passion to get this kind of stuff on television. And I used to talk to the producers, and they invariably told me that it just wasn't interesting enough. It needed nastiness, you needed something bad to work off of. How dare you just do good?
Yeah. sort of like people sort of being attracted to existentialism. That's a real philosophy because it's always talking about the absurdity of life and the meaninglessness of death and all those things. And that's real. We could take that seriously. But joy, happiness, and just feeling good about life, well, that's trivial. Who could take that seriously?
We are such kindred souls.
Yeah. I have a feeling that maybe in some professional reasons, that's why the near-death experience isn't taken as seriously. I mean, if it suggested that at the end of life there was nothing but pain, sorrow, a sense of having lived in vain, and so on, probably it would have a different kind of attention. But the fact that these are such beautiful experiences for so many people means that, well, wait a second, maybe, we can't take this all too seriously. It's just too good to be true.
So you said something else I never thought about. That's a very interesting
I'll try to stop. I really
you got to stop. No, that's a very interesting point, that this culture is so attached to difficulty, pain, complexity, that when something comes from, a profound place that says joy and light, it tends to be ignored.
Yeah.
Actually, I was kind of amused, not quite the right word, when I saw your correspondence, and I saw that you were coming out here to raise money for the organization of near death. and I thought, oh gosh, I know, that's the way we all have to do it.
Yeah.
In the best of all possible worlds, whatever, we would be eagerly, all of us, seeking out your knowledge, not having you compete with diseases and what have you for getting a buck here, or two here or there. But actually, we would be eager to find out what's going on, to penetrate the mysteries. I noticed that, in fact, that's about all that we are fascinated by as human beings.
Mystery.
What is it? What makes it work? How does it happen?
Mm-hmm.
All the sciences. I mean, all there is us, And yet when something as ennobling and beautiful and really empowering as your information comes along, well, how interesting we're able to sort of just pigeonhole it and not pay too much. I'm actually shocked that we don't pay more attention to this information.
Well, I think there's a lot of public interest in this particular phenomenon, but there's not a lot of public support for it in terms of foundation support, government support, and that sort of thing, which I think maybe will change, but it certainly is the way it is now.
Excuse me, Ken, I have a question. This is Max without the little box. For you old viewers,
Loud, Max.
I was listening to you, and I was wondering, since I don't know what your story is, neither does the audience, how has your personal life changed and your perspective changed since you began to do this research? I mean, I don't know whether you had a personal experience of dying.
No, not myself.
So how has your life changed?
Good question, Max. Thanks a lot.
Well,
that question.
That's a little one hard to answer because I'm not sure if I can really reflect back to how I was. But it wasn't the case that I was an atheist, a skeptic, a rationalist, a materialist, and all the rest. At least I like to think that I wasn't. But I think one of the things that happened is I found myself more and more in this web of near-death research and meeting so many people was that I began to see, at least to a degree, with the eyes of the people that I had become very close to. And one of the things that happens with people who have this experience is that whatever they may have thought about the world beforehand, as whether they were religious or non-religious or whatever their particular point of view is, this experience, it's almost like going through the tunnel and into the light, sort of homogenizes people in a particular way. It's not that they lose their uniqueness, but somehow they come out with a certain core set of values and a spiritual outlook on life. And I think I would have to say that I become more spiritually oriented, that the kinds of things that near-death experiencers value, I don't say I have their qualities, but I say that I think I've come to value the things that they value. I can see their importance because when they speak about things, it's not just head knowledge. I see it in the way they relate to other people. I see the love that they express, the compassion that they have for people, how they want to work with the dying people, and how selfless they often are. And anybody who's around that kind of energy cannot help but admire it, be affected by it, and try as best one can to internalize it. So I think I've sort of picked up some of this, at least by osmosis anyway, even though I've never myself had the experience of coming close to death and experiencing the light.
So insight by association.
Yeah, kind of. And that's, I like to maybe follow up on that. That's sort of what we're trying to do in our work with our near-death studies organization. We're trying to make people aware that they too can pick up these qualities, that there's a way in which perhaps more effectively and directly by people who have had this kind of experience, some of this energy can be transmitted. We like to bring people together with those that have had this kind of experience so that these particular individuals and others that are like them that have had similar experiences can sort of be teachers for the new age, help people appreciate this particular kind of reality that we were talking about before.
Oh, that is beautiful too.
Because I know I've learned so much from them, and I know that if a dummy like my grammar isn't too good, but a dummy like me can learn so much as I feel that I have from being with these people. I feel like anybody can, and it really has been the privilege of my life to be in association with these persons.
Well, it's profoundly true for me that being in the presence of wisdom, of knowing, of real knowing, is so much better a teacher for me than being told about things, than reading than having intellectual information. Yeah. And it does feel to me like the positive things that are happening in this day and age, among the positive things are this kind of populace becoming privy to what used to only be the information of the priest class or the intelligentsia. Yeah. And that the populace comes into this supreme knowledge and then rubs elbows and shoulders with each other, you know, and that we all come into this sort of homogeneous understanding of what but our oneness. Yeah.
It's interesting that it's like the spiritual principle is being democratized. It's not that the sage or the seer or the mystic, a special kind of elite almost sort of person, has this knowledge and then transmits it to followers, but that everybody can have this particular kind of experience, and then they begin to share in this way. George Gallup estimates that maybe as many as 8 million adult Americans have had this kind of experience, and with resuscitation technology being what it is, we can be sure that in many other countries in the world, millions more will have this experience and will be sharing. And I sort of see this expanding and people making contact with one another from this particular place within themselves. I think this is a part of the evolution of consciousness in our time on this particular planet, and it is very beautiful.
Yeah, there is
and very hopeful. Exactly.
Yes, there is hope that we will all get it. Not that we're so awful and so this and so that, but that this understanding is starting to ooze up and be inescapable. I mean, you really can't be alive today and not know that there's another universe underneath the world of appearances that has something to be said for it,
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? Because that was not true even in my childhood, I called myself an atheist because it didn't make sense to me. I said if it wasn't under a microscope, it couldn't exist. And there was total support for my position, It was a reasonable position at the time.
Yeah. Well, this is there. I have a feeling that one of the reasons why this is changing is that obviously the times that the planet are in now are very dark times. They're very foreboding times. They're filled with peril. And it's almost as though these emissaries from the light, these near-death experiencers, are coming to sort of counteract this, to give us a choice and to make clear what our options are. So it's almost there's a kind of a dialectic between this darkness that we may feel on a planetary scale and these beings of light, not from the sense of, in the experience, but those who come back from the experience, radiant with light, trying to sort of counteract this darkness and brighten the darkness for all of us.
I'm smiling because I love your pictures.
Time flies when you're having fun. 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, then I got to get to...
Does that mean I go away now or what?
No, there was only one question I thought, because I'd much rather talk than prepare questions. But there was a question that I had, so it's a good time to ask my question. It's not actually a question, it's a request. I would like you to talk a little bit, because I read it in your paper and it turned me on, about what that kind of review of your life aspect is like, and what people learn about how to live from their experience of dying.
Yeah, and we have 4 minutes now to do all this, huh? Okay.
You're on.
What do you learn about your life? What's the meaning of life in 4 minutes or less? Okay, right.
I forgot to ask.
Yeah. What happens, Suzanne, in these experiences is that a person will, say, get 1 million images of his or her life, all in a moment outside of time, and not just what that person's life has been, thoughts that have occurred, the effects of his actions on others, but scenes or episodes, fragments of what in the future, it seems, of what that person's life will be or might be if he or she chooses to go back to it. You sort of get the whole trajectory of your life right there. It's like you're on candid camera your whole life, and suddenly the videotape can be processed all at once. And you see the meaning, the order, the coherence, the beauty, the things that really matter about life. And this has such a powerful impact on you because it's all with such accelerated mental processes that this is, is coming through you, that you understand sort of the thread of your life. You understand the design of your life. You understand that there is something like a blueprint for your life, and that you have a choice as to whether or not to adhere to that blueprint or not. But you see what that is, and you come back with that understanding, and that everybody has that particular kind of sense of purpose. There is a purpose. You may not be able to articulate exactly what it is, but you know that you have one. And that's why people come back affirmed with a feeling of that life really does matter. Despite the beauty of the experience of entering into death, these people, when they come back, are much more pro-life than they were before in many instances. So purpose and meaning and the design of one's life, this is what one understands. And you understand that the things that really matter, the thing that really matters most of all, if it can be summed up in one word, is love. And the one adjective that you could apply to it, unconditional love. This is the one thing that matters most. And everybody, almost without exception, if they were asked this, would, I think, say this after having this particular kind of experience. Now you have a half a second.
Do I have any time to ask him if there's any punishment in case you haven't done a good job? Do you get that sense? 2 minutes, okay. Yeah.
There really doesn't seem to be punishment the way we know it. There is insight. You see how you screwed up, and you vow more or less. I'll give you one example. One guy said quite simply, I learned through this experience that I hadn't loved enough, and I wanted desperately to come back to life in order to repay all those debts of love that I hadn't discharged before this experience. That's what that's the punishment. You just sort of see how you are, and you also see how you could be better by loving in this particular way.
Could you put that in a telegram? I would like to send it to a couple of people I know. Please, love some more. Well, I would actually like to end the show on a slightly bizarre note, we might say, just reflecting on life and death and, the value of life. And this also, we start with the LA Times. Let's end with the LA Times. Can you get this, Steve? Have we got it? Okay. Well, this is 5 or 6 of 17 cars that are lined up here, and this dude is sailing over them. He didn't make it. He crashed, sprained his back, lost some teeth. He decided to forego any further snowmobile jumps. It's a snowmobile. And, well, I don't know if you can see what I wrote. Ain't life cheap? Can you imagine that with this incredible gift of this opportunity for this experience of life, that would be worth doing? But even more than that being worth doing as food for thought, can you see the background? This is jammed with spectators. What are they watching for? They're watching for somebody to kick off. Why? Meditate on this all week. I'm getting a wrap-up signal, so this is your meditation for the week. May we never see pictures like this anywhere again, and may we see only pictures of people having a good time, making love, making positive choices, and meeting wonderful people like this. A real thrill.
Thank
really
you, Suzanne.
Genuine.
Pleasure for me
Thanks
to be here.
million.
Thanks.
Hey, how about a kiss?
See you after the show.
See you next week. Come back, same time, same place. And we're going to do an event. So call us if get on our list, because we'd like to invite you. If you really know what we're talking about, and if you burn with the same passion we burn with, we'd like to know you. Bye.
Back in my body again, wondering what happened just then. Was that the Lord above? Did I just imagine all that love? I reckon I'll know one day for sure. I reckon, boom, I'll know one day for sure. Boom, boom, boom. Hey! That's it.
We now return you to Consensus Reality, where everyone can participate in creating our world as the Garden of Eden.